with Emerson J. Mitchell, 2588 Hidden Valley Lane, Napa, California, 94558, phone 707-224-5745, and Helen Earley of the Oldsmobile History Center at the center, July 8th, 1992. The other lady's voice you will hear is Isabel M. Mitchell, wife of Emerson. Well, Mr. Mitchell, if you want to tell me who you are and your name, address, phone number, and anything else?
My name is Emerson J. Mitchell, living in Napa, California.
What's your street?
2588 Hidden Valley Lane, Napa, 94558. Area code 707-224-5745. I'm 68 years old, if anyone's interested. But anyway.
So you're Ruben Shettler's nephew?
I am Uncle Ruben, or Ruben Shettler was my uncle. He passed away in the early 50s.
Did he live in California?
And he lived in California at 705 Serrano, Los Angeles. Big, beautiful home. And
how did he meet Mr. Olds, and why was he interested in
he was a personal friend of Mr. Olds. That's a good question, because he was in oil and in farm equipment. And Ruben Shettler. No, he was in farm equipment here in Michigan, because he had a home in Detroit and several apartment buildings in Detroit.
Was this before he moved to California?
Before he moved to California. And he had quite a Signal Hill in California was about maybe 25% his in those days.
Is that the oil area?
That was the oil area. That's outside of Long Beach, California.
What caused him to leave Michigan?
California was his winter home. Serrano was his winter home. And then in the 40s, he bought a home in Palm Springs, California, or 30s, beg your pardon, where he would take my brother and I. He had a chauffeur, big brick home in Los Angeles, elevators going up to the second floor. Really an impressive place, really impressive. He was married to my father's sister, and her name was Jessie. Wonderful woman. She collected dolls, had hundreds and hundreds of dolls.
Did they have children?
And she had one child, and his name was John. I don't know. He's about my age. So, or maybe a little older than I am. Whether he's still living or not, I don't know. I've lost complete contact with him.
But your folks also live, your home is in California, your folks are there?
I was born in Grayling, Michigan. Graduated from Flint Northern. Joined the Navy in 41 and World War II and so on and so forth. Met my bride. And she also would visit with the Uncle Ruben and Jessie.
Your bride's name?
My maiden name, Isabel Simmons, Simmons.
People
from Canada. And
where are you?
Well, let's see, Brandon, Manitoba, Winnipeg.
And then, of course, my dad came down here and worked for the telephone company. So I was born here.
Oh, yes.
They just made it down here and I was born.
But Ruben Shettler, Uncle Ruben would We lived at 1131 West 68th Street in Los Angeles, California. And he would send his car down to pick my brother and I up, take us to Palm Springs or take us to his home in Los Angeles. Oh, 8 to 14 years old.
Your brother was older?
1 year older than I, yes.
When did your dad pass?
Well, Mr. Mitchell passed away in 1938.
That's your father.
That's my father. And I still had contact with him even after I got out of the service.
But you don't know how your uncle met Mr. Olds.
Other than being personal friends with him, and Mr. Olds requested him to this is when he was experimenting with the horseless carriage.
When Mr. Olds was.
Yes, in
Okay.
1904. And that time he loaned him $5,000 to start the after the Oldsmobile plant burnt down, I believe,
That was in 1901.
1901. And
So Mr. Shettler loaned the money outright. He didn't take stock.
no, he received $5,000 worth of stock
Okay.
worth par. I'm going to give you this letter that Ruben Shettler wrote my father, and
That would be nice, but you could,
expressing his desire to his desires in the building of the Oldsmobile and the Rio Motor Car Horseless Carriage Company, and the acquisition of the fairgrounds here in Lansing.
what about that? Tell us about that,
Well,
that acquisition.
he
Now we're talking about Mr. Shettler.
Mr. Shettler, right? Uh, moved the plant to Lansing, and was instructed to the city of Lansing was instructed to give the deed made to Olds Motor Works. That's at the Lansing State Fair grounds, which was the present location at the writing of this letter, which was in 1937 on May 11. And Fred, let's see, Charles P. Downey and Fred Thurman gave notes also to purchase the land or to get the deed to the land.
Now this was what, 1900?
19, doggone, I have a 1904 is when all this took place. Early in 1904.
So when you say gave notes, that did Mr. Shettler give a note too? Or
No, he received stock at par, right?
So say gave notes.
Well, the city of Lansing gave notes to Ruben Shettler that they would turn the deed to the fairground over to them.
They were like a communication you're talking
That's
about.
correct, yeah.
Business thing.
Yeah. And with the understanding that if Mr. Olds Motorworks did not move to that location, the deed and notes would be returned and canceled. Well, fortunately, they did move to Lansing.
Is there any value placed on the site?
Uh,
Does it tell how many acres?
well, how many acres the fairground was at that time, I don't know, but
We think
they-
it's 52.
they took over the whole area. And he, evidently Lansing was a very small town in those days. And they were suffering from serious bank and factory failures. It took many months of work for them to finally agree to the move of Lansing to Lansing. Well, what is left of the Oldsmobile factory. He made arrangements with Grand Trunk Railway. No, Ruben Shettler. Made arrangements with Grand Trunk Railway to move all of the factory equipment, employees and their families, and furnishings put on a railroad siding free of cost to Lansing. And they guaranteed the Grand Trunk Railway to handle all the incoming and outgoing freights for the other railways free of charge.
Let's see, that would be Motor Works guaranteed.
Ruben Shettler guaranteed it.
Check for guaranteed. This, can we go over that again? What
Sure.
is guaranteed?
The Grand Trunk Railway, their only railway connection, and i.e. from the Oldsmobile factory into Lansing,
Grand Trunk.
was the Grand Trunk Railway. And moving all the factory equipment, employees, their families, and furnishings, and putting them on a railroad siding free of cost. And the Grand Trunk Railway would handle all of the incoming and outgoing freights for the other railways free of charge.
You say other railways, that would mean railways that didn't have spurs into Lansing.
Into Lansing, correct. And but retaining the first rights to all shipping they could handle. In other words, all the factory works, automobiles, and so on and so forth, that they could ship on the Grand Trunk Railway. And it put quite a hardship on the Downey Hotel, because the Downey Hotel, I believe, burnt.
This is still in 1904.
It's still in 1904 or thereabouts. And this marks the beginning of the Lansing progress. Later on, I believe in 1904, Mr. Olds retired from Olds Motor Works, and Mr. Shettler, my uncle, was then making his winter home in Los Angeles. And early in 1904, Mr. Olds visited him at his winter home in Los Angeles. And they had the understanding at that time that as soon as he could dispose of his old motor stock, we would organize a new automobile company known as the Rio Motor Car Company. evidently no one knew that they were doing this. And Mr. Shettler, my uncle, interviewed a few of his Lansing friends who would purchase stock in the new company.
Is that named in there? Do you know the names of those friends?
Oh, yes. The records evidently will show that he furnished 73% of the money.
That's Ruben Shettler.
Ruben Shettler
73%. And real.
paid for all common stock, and until including stock for R.H. Scott, E.F. Peer,
How is Peer spelled?
P-E-E-R, P-E-E-R, E.F. Peer, and others, and carried them until they could pay him for the stock.
Is there any division of all that stock in between Peer and the other two?
Mr. Olds gave common stock in consideration for a small piece of land used as part of the factory location. No, but Mr. Old's duties were largely assumed by R.H. Scott, who was not an officer at the company at that time.
What were Mr. Old's duties in the new company, does it say?
Well, let's see. Well, evidently he was the president of the company, because if Mr. Shettler was successful in financing the company, he would turn over to him 2,000 shares of common stock.
Excuse me, he say
Mr. Olds,
Shettler,
2,000 shares of common stock.
if the company were successful.
Right. Mr. Olds refused 5,000 shares of preferred stock and preferred to be paid in cash. And that caused a very serious financial worries for all the other preferred stockholders.
Doesn't name any names, does it? Who are those stockholders?
Well, already secured credit of $100,000 from the Detroit National Bank, guaranteed on his own personal credit. No, Shettler. Mr. McPherson of the bank, the Detroit National Bank, was its president. And in early 1910, it has reference to the interference by R.H. Scott at the time, and he was a superintendent of the factory.
What kind of interference?
Well, I believe that it goes on to say that he was an alcoholic or something of this nature, Scott, and did not carry out his duties as the superintendent of the plant.
See, Scott had assumed the duties of Mr. Olds, who was president.
President, right.
Kind of stepped down.
Right.
Does it name any other officers?
Mr. R.M. Owen, who purchased the output for cash. In other words, the output of the first Evidently, what he's referring to is the output of the automobiles or the carriages. He would purchase them in cash.
School speak.
In arranging a meeting with Mr. R.E. Owen, who, R.M., I beg your pardon,
Okay.
R.M. Owen, who purchased our output for cash. Doesn't specify automobile, but I would assume that's what they're talking about, because this was in 1910. And he gave Mr. Owen an option on part of his stock, meaning Mr. Ruben Shettler's stock.
See who gave who.
Mr. Shettler gave Owen an option to buy his stock. Yes, part of his stock. And directed a letter to Mr. Olds, who was then in Florida, asking him to give Mr. Owen an option on enough of his stock so that Mr. Owen and Mr. Peer, P-E-E-R again, and myself would hold controlling interest in the motor car company.
That would be Shettler.
Shettler, Owen, and Peer have the controlling interest in the real motor, right, carriage company, that's what they called him. And
Is there anything there that Mr. Olds agreed?
let's see. Well, if he did not wire Mr. Owen or himself, Mr. Shettler, accepting the agreement, and wire Mr. Owen making an appointment with him in Florida, that I was now in Los Angeles, but would take a train for Lansing and take away Scott's authority in the factory and dispose of Mr. Olds of the graft of common stock, gift of common stock he had received.
This is Mr. Shettler.
Shettler,
To
Mr. Olds.
He's quoting from that letter, then, isn't he?
That's correct. Mr. Owen met him in Florida and secured an option completing the deal. In the spring, when Mr. Olds returned, Mr. Owen was to assume my place as elected director, vice president, and general manager, referring to Ruben Shettler again. But for some unconscionable reason, best known to Messrs. Olds and Scott, Mr. Owens allowed this option to elapse. And after Mr. Shettler had resigned in his favor, this created a situation as there was nothing Mr. Peer, the secretary or treasurer, and Ruben Shettler could do about it. All they could do is sell his stock and retire from the company. Ruben Shettler and Mr. Owens.
Owen or
Owen.
Owen. Can we go back on one statement there? You said if they didn't pick up the option, that there was nothing.
The deal would not be completed. Owen, Peer, and Ruben Shettler. Right. And Scott, who was the superintendent. And as I said, it created quite a situation, and that there wasn't anything that Mr. Peer, who was secretary and treasurer, and Ruben Shettler, who was vice president and general manager and etc., could do but sell their stock and retire from the company.
all contingent upon Mr. Olds not picking up the option,
No,
contingent on,
it was contingent, yes, on contingent on Olds picking up the option.
but he elected not to do that.
Well, for some reason, Mr. Owen allowed his option. Mr. Owen was was the culprit in the whole deal.
Yeah. This option
The
lapsed.
lapse. And, so they sold their stock and retired from the company.
Shettler, Peer,
Here, Scott. Owen, also,
and Peer.
and Peer. Scott was the culprit. He, the R.M. Owens contract by which he purchased our output for cash, this forced a later development, the cancellation of this cash sales agreement, resulting in Mr. Shettler's judgment and a serious financial loss to the company, and also losing Mr. Owens' advisory assistance. All of the, what Mr. Shettler's talking about can be verified in the records of Olds, evidently,
Oh, so you mean the real car company records?
and Oldsmobile records.
No, not real, because Mr. Olds had no connection with us, see, after 1904.
And well,
And we
then it
had-
would have to be R.E. Olds,
it
right?
would be the area. So,
Because of up to 1910, right? The Rio. Yes, that's what it says here. Can be verified by the record, yet evidently authorized by Rio management and others, whoever was management at that time in 1910. And the reorganization of the Rio Motor Car Company. And as my uncle, Mr. Shettler, says, it's an insult to himself and Mr. Peer that the Lansing newspapers wouldn't publish anything at all.
it's not much different than today in some respects.
Oh, that's what you told me over the phone, when I talked to you. And my uncle went on to he would have answered any of the untrue statements or claims that were made due to his friends interested in the Rio. And he also said, now by God's will, the management of the company has been changed, and I cannot see how this true statement can injure any stockholder, and I believe they will love to know the truth.
Now, what true statement is he referring to there?
Well, everything he has stated, and that he gave the company and received no salary and not a cent toward his expenses for all this he has done for Mr. Olds and the Rio Motor Car Company.
So actually, out of this, was it $5,000 he'd invested? He had gotten his stock. He had gotten so many shares of stock at par value, and that's all the
That's it.
remuneration Shettler had ever had.
Ever had. And he said he wishes to add that for the 6 years service I gave to the company, I received no salary nor a cent towards my expenses. And naturally, this was a gain toward the stockholders. And the early hotel accommodations of Lansing were not sufficient to meet the requirements of the capital city, meaning the people that were going to be coming from the Olds plant. And And Mr. Frank Wentworth was building his hotel on the corner of Michigan and Grand and was unable to obtain sufficient loans for banks and other sources in advance, and I advanced him on his personal note sufficient money to complete an open same.
Is there a date on when that happened?
No, I don't have that. I don't have that date.
Okay.
And at the same time, the Downey Hotel was partially destroyed by fire. So whenever it burnt, that's the time that the other one was being built. That can be tied up. And this created a serious shortage in hotel accommodations. So the bank promised Ruben Shettler financial aid to rebuild, but failed to respond.
Didn't say which
It was probably again the Detroit National Bank, wasn't it?
that was the bank used earlier.
Yeah.
They promised them aid.
And then they didn't fulfill it. Now this is for the Downey Hotel.
2, Emerson Mitchell tape, July 8th, 1992.
Side 2, continuation.
Right. Well, I have to put an introduction.
There you go. Evidently, they were trying to get loans from several banks.
Two.
No, the Downey investors, right? And the banks promised financial aid to rebuild, but they failed. No, there must have been several banks involved, local banks probably, and they failed to respond. And so then he loaned the Downeys, $100,000. Shettler loaned $100,000 on their personal note to complete the work. Both of the loans, meaning Wentworth and Downey. Well, evidently there must have been more than one Downey.
Downey, yes.
Downey is, yeah, Downey Hotel. Both of the loans were fully paid. And he makes a statement that he would, that in years gone by, I've given Lansing my best service, which I believe is true. And God knows I am entitled to this publicity, or whatever you want to put in there. Recognition, I believe, is what he would be asking for. And recognition for the beloved interest he gave in the city of gave to the city of Lansing.
What you've been reading excerpts from and commenting on, Mr. Mitchell, are Ruben Shettler's letter to
My father
your father, and his first name
was Shelley,
Shelley, Shelley.
Shelley Philip Mitchell.
And this letter is postmarked 1937.
May 11th,
1937.
4 p.m.
And these are Shettler's remembrances of what took place.
What took place?
The Real Motor Car Company,
Right.
And certain other.
Right. Moving the plant factory from Detroit to Lansing. And I would like to add that in this letter, he has an appendix, and he states, this, Mr. Shettler states, this statement was submitted to the Lansing Journal, Lansing State Journal, who refused to publish same either as a news item or paid advertisement. Also, my previous communications with them or to them at the time, incorrect items were published and were not answered. In other words, they would not give him the opportunity to answer the incorrect items that they published. And if anything else, this is one of the reasons why I followed through on this after all of these years, is because I did not know that a book was written and giving him recognition for his work with the Rio Motor Car Company. And but I contacted a couple of attorneys here in Lansing and a couple of professors, and Professor Lewis gave me your name, Helen Earley, which I was very, very pleased to get. And my following through with this has led me to this book and a lot of other things. And I'm sure that my Uncle Ruben is going to rest now.
You feel better about it.
Oh, certainly. In fact, I get a little emotional about it because he
Well,
was a wonderful man. And so was my aunt.
you know, there's one other book too, Mr. Mitchell, that was written by I think this man was a professor at MSU and he was doing his doctorate. And the book was published by the Michigan State University Press. It
Mhm.
was by Dr. Neumeister, Neumeister. That's
If you'll hang on a second, I'll have my secretary take this down. Meaning my girlfriend of 48 years. I run her around the office 3 or 4 times a day, just to keep her in trim.
Dr. Neumeister had done a lot of research on R.E. Olds, on the Olds Motor Vehicle Company, the Olds Motor Works, the Oldsmobile division of General Motors, as well as the Rio Motor Car Company, and Mr. Olds, of course, his connection with the Rio. That might have some different insights than Professor May's book. But to my
Is it
knowledge,
Mace or Day?
M-A-Y.
May. Right.
That Neumeister's book, as far as I know, isn't available on the newsstands, and I have checked the state of Michigan library, and they did not have a copy. But I would certainly check the Michigan State Library, State University Library,
Right.
because they published a book, they certainly should
Have a copy of it,
Yeah.
right?
And that may give you some reference there too that doesn't appear in Dr. May's book.
Well, he was a wonderful man. He,
How old was he when he passed away?
he was, heaven's sakes, 1900. He had to be in his 80s, high 80s when he passed away. I really don't recall. No, I don't know what, I know it was in the early 50s.
Well, then,
And then my aunt passed away shortly thereafter.
after apparently this 1910, then Mr. Shettler just had no connection with Rio after that. Is what
Apparently,
this letter that Ruben Shettler wrote to your father
Right.
would indicate.
indicate that after that he had no further connection with them.
This,
The partnership or everything had dissolved. So,
well, did you keep in touch with Uncle Ruben?
I went into the service and was in for 6 years during World War II. May 23rd, 1938 is when Shelley Mitchell passed away, my father. At which time we came back to Michigan.
Was
And
Ruben older than your father?
oh yes, yeah.
Quite a bit,
Well, I wouldn't say too much older.
just the two sons and that family, your father and Ruben?
My father, his sister married Ruben Shettler.
Okay,
Okay,
I see. So
he had one son.
sister married Ruben.
Right, who was a Mitchell. So anyway, the old gentleman was very kind to me. He had paid up annuities, life insurance for both my brother, for my brother and myself, and which was very nice. And
You say you haven't kept in touch with your cousin John.
no, I haven't, and because I went into the service, and I know he went into the service, and what happened after that, I really don't know, because
He is alive now.
to my knowledge, I doubt it very much. Unless it's Senator John Mitchell, you know. Wouldn't that be something? I'm a Republican and he's a Democrat. Or Senator Mitchell.
So,
Well, other than taking my brother and I and his chauffeur taking us to Palm Springs and picking us up at our home and sending me to etiquette school, which was
what did you learn in etiquette school?
etiquette. No. Eating, presentation, uh, grooming, and you wouldn't know it, but look at me today, would you? But this is my cross-country driving outfit.
Casual food and farm.
Sure. And they also sent me to radio school. This is why, I've always wondered whether Senator Mitchell was any relation of mine, because my Uncle Ruben was very interested in politics. And he sent me to school, radio school, and so on
Why
and so
did he
forth.
select that, or did you
I think
select
I
that?
know he selected it for me. And,
But you had a father.
oh yeah. But
He wasn't very
he wasn't very well. And he
How you kind of got away from things that way because his mother made him live life,
sure.
but we still were in contact, and my Aunt Jessie used to take me over to, I think they were a little partial to me because my brother was very small. He was small stature, and I was very robust and big, and
Now
and
your
what
Aunt
have you.
Jessie,
Shelley Mitchell's sister,
Shelley Mitchell was your,
my father. Hmm. And I didn't think they was a little partial to me because I was more forthcoming and than my brother.
what kind of a temperament did Ruben Shettler?
Very, very even, kind. Um, they put on after graduation from etiquette school. They put the dinner on, which was formal, in their home on 707 Serrano. I think there was 18 of us, young children, 14 years old, 15 years old, and all dressed formally. And I can remember how I despised getting dressed in that formal, you know, tux. And I said, oh, no. But we had a wonderful time.
What about approximately what year? You were out
This would
of
be
etiquette
in,
school.
this would be in the 1934, 35.
Is that house that Mr. Shettler owned still there?
Oh, yes. Mhm. Right.
It looks
Well, exactly on the outside. A big, beautiful brick building, home. I'll send you a picture of the home and his car and his chauffeur and his wife and all her dolls and
which
Yeah, I think he might be interesting.
I was gonna ask you if you had
Mhm.
any pictures of Mr.
Right.
Shettler.
Wonderful man, and my aunt was also very, very.
He apparently was very generous.
Oh, definitely,
Were
definitely.
there other projects that he had an interest in? And you mentioned his oil.
Well, mostly in the 30s, well, he was more or less retired from everything other than his oil interests. And my Aunt Jessie, I don't know whether you remember or you're too young to remember Amy Simple McPherson. My Aunt Jessie, Ruben Shettler's wife, would take me to her temple, which was down on Wilshire Boulevard. Her, no, it was only about 3 blocks from Western Avenue, I believe, on Western
What city is this?
in Los Angeles. And what a memory of going into that church, and it would put everything to shame these days that they have. And I'm talking about Oral Roberts, I'm talking about any of them. Her band and that she had was fantastic.
Really was elegant.
Oh, it was elegant inside,
Did you hear her speak?
Oh, yes. Saw it every Sunday almost for several years. Oh, yeah. Very compelling woman. And you
Living
could,
a good life, though, was
well, aren't a lot of them? I dare say. Anyway,
did Mr. Shettler go to church?
no. Not with us anyway. He could have gone on his own somewhere, but I never knew him to go.
What did he look like?
Similar to the picture that Mr. May has in his
Okay,
in
in his book.
book. But
That's the only picture we have.
well, I'm gonna send you of Williams, his chauffeur, a I don't know which word to use now, colored, black, but he wouldn't use Afro-American, I know that. A wonderful man, a wonderful chauffeur. Just as a human being, he's
What
wonderful.
kind of a car did he drive?
That's what I'll send you a picture of the car that he drove, and I'll have to find out. It was a cutaway where the chauffeur they had a glass between the back of the car and an open top.
Chauffeur sat outside.
Sat outside and everybody else sat in the back. And when that great big black automobile come rolling up to our house, everybody would look and see what, and here, get out and go in the car. Chauffeur open the door for you, and it, we're talking about in the 30s and things were tough.
Really living.
Living it up. Living it up. It was great.
They only had one son.
Correct. And
did he major in anything? Did he have an automobile interest, or was there something?
I really don't know. He was let's see. I know he was interested in politics. This I do know, but
well, it's so
what the heck was he doing when he got out of service? Had something to do with engineering. I know that. Whether he was with the Army Engineer Corps, I don't recall, but I know he had something to do with engineering. And this is what I turned out to be. He was an engineer also. Well, not in automobiles.
I was just going to ask you.
In composites and fishing rods, injection molding, and so on and so forth. And did my own tool and die making.
Interesting career.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anything else you want to share about Mr. Shettler that comes to your mind, Mr. Mitchell?
Well, I know that he took care of the employees that he had.
He had a company, or he had an office?
No, he had an office. He had a secretary. He also had an accountant course, a chauffeur and a couple of maids in the house.
So he took care of his employees.
Everyone,
you're saying.
well, let's not use the word take care, because that looks like it was on welfare or something.
Well,
They,
is that what you're saying?
he set them up for life with a pension, all of them. That was in his will. And
What happened?
he didn't have me in his will. But I had some very good annuities though, so
State, did that go to his
go,
son?
went to his wife. Right. And from there on, I really don't know what happened after that, because I was in Utah. We were in Utah. I built a plant for Browning Arms in Utah, and in Morgan County, Utah. And after that, I really don't know what happened because I lost contact.
Given us a wonderful, with this copy of the letter from Mr. Shettler to your father.
That's to you, from me.
I appreciate that. I very much do. And I appreciate your looking over the interview agreement. Would you like to sign?
Oh, certain. There's no problem there whatsoever.
Because this is a significant addition to Oldsmobile's archives.
Well, I hope so.
It is.
He has been so interested in, you know, since his mom passed away, and he's found a lot of information that she had put away.
Well, anything having to do with Oldsmobile is certainly a wonderful addition to our archives. We're trying to fill in gaps, trying to correct errors, trying to preserve.
Yes.
We really
Oh, it's
are a
wonderful.
preservationist area too.
And today must be the 8th, right?
Yes,
I'll sign it here.
yes.
The 7/8.
8. And let's see here, 50 years ago, I hired in at Oldsmobile, and today,
Today
very day,
is, so,
Happy anniversary.
thank you. And to meet two nice people like you is the frosting on the cake. Believe me, I'm so
Thank
pleased
you.
that you took a moment to hunt me up.
well, we really, we were just looking forward to this, and we were on, you know, with our kids for 3 weeks, and then we visited some people in Tecumseh.
Let me sign that while you're here.
I've got it.
And then you'll make a copy for me
I
too, will you
certainly
please?
will. Too.
I'd like to add it to my, you're a witnessee.
Would be just great. Yes.
You know, I talked to, I also talked to, Dorothy Fry.
That was over in,
At Michigan State University. And she's with the Archives of Historical Collections.
She didn't mention Mr. Neumeister's book, Dr.
No, she didn't. She didn't, but
I think you'd want to pursue it.
I believe so, yes.
Shut this off. I think we just kind of covered everything, and this is just wonderful.